The sound of coins clinking into her uncle's palm was the last thing Amelia Owens expected to hear on a Tuesday morning. But there she stood in the dusty main street of Nebraska City, Nebraska, watching him count blood money with trembling hands while a stranger with cold eyes waited to claim his purchase. It was September the 1876, and the morning sun had barely crested the horizon when her Uncle Bernard had shaken her awake, told her to pack her things, and dragged her to the edge of town where the wagons gathered. She had thought perhaps he was finally sending her to relatives back east, away from his drinking and his debts. The truth proved far worse. The man who stood before them now was tall and gaunt, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and left out in harsh weather too long. His name was Horace Kelly, and he was a trader moving through Nebraska on his way to the mining camps in the Black Hills. What he traded in exactly made Amelia's stomach turn when she realized her uncle had answered his advertisement for a wife. Except Horace Kelly was not looking for a wife. He was looking for workers, women who would fetch good money from lonely miners. And her uncle knew it. "She is strong and healthy," Bernard was saying, his words slurring slightly even at this early hour. "Good with cooking and cleaning, worth every penny I am asking." Amelia stood frozen, her small carpet bag clutched in white-knuckled hands. She was 19 years old, and for the past 3 years since her parents died of cholera, she had lived with her uncle, working herself to exhaustion, trying to keep his household running while he drank away every cent. She had endured his neglect, his harsh words, his indifference. But this betrayal cut deeper than anything she could have imagined. "Please," she whispered, looking at her uncle with eyes that burned with unshed tears. "Please do not do this." Bernard would not meet her gaze. His face, bloated and red from years of whiskey, remained fixed on the coins. "You have been nothing but a burden, girl. I have kept you fed and housed for 3 years. This is payment for what I am owed." Horace Kelly stepped forward, reaching for her arm. His fingers were like iron bands, and Amelia jerked back instinctively. Now," he said, his voice like gravel scraping over stone. "No need to make this difficult. You will come with me quiet-like, and we will get along just fine." "I will not go with you." Amelia's voice shook, but she forced the words out. "I am not property to be sold." Kelly's grip tightened, and pain shot up her arm. "You are what your uncle says you are, and he says you are mine now." The commotion had begun to draw attention from early risers in town. A few shopkeepers sweeping their storefronts paused to watch. A woman with a basket hurried past, eyes averted. No one intervened. This was not their business. And in 1876, a man's dealings with his family were his own concern, no matter how distasteful. But then a voice cut through the morning air, calm and steady and edged with steel. "Let the lady go." All 3 of them turned. The man who approached was perhaps 25, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He wore dusty trail clothes, a worn leather vest, and a hat pulled low over eyes that were the color of storm clouds. His gun belt sat easy on his hips, and he moved with the fluid grace of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. There was something about him that commanded attention, a quiet authority that made even Horace Kelly pause. "This is not your concern," Kelly said, but his hand loosened slightly on Amelia's arm. The stranger stopped a few feet away, his gaze moving from Kelly to Bernard to Amelia. When his eyes met hers, she saw something unexpected there. Genuine concern. "Are you going with this man of your own free will, miss?" Amelia's heart hammered in her chest. This might be her only chance. "No, my uncle is selling me to him. Please, I do not want to go." The stranger's jaw tightened. He looked at Bernard with such contempt that her uncle actually took a step back. "You are selling your own kin?" "She is mine to do with as I please," Bernard blustered, trying to summon some dignity. "I have legal guardianship. She has no say in the matter." "The hell she does not." The stranger's hand moved to rest on his gun, not threatening exactly, but making his position clear. "Miss, step away from him." Kelly's face darkened. Now you listen here, Cowboy. I have paid good money for this girl, and I will be taking her with me. You have no right to interfere. I have every right to stop a crime when I see one. The stranger's voice remained calm, but there was iron underneath. Money exchanged or not, you cannot force someone into servitude against their will. That was settled by a war not too long ago, in case you forgot. This is different, Kelly snapped. This is a family matter, a debt being settled. Did she incur the debt? Her uncle did. Then her uncle should pay it, not her. The stranger took another step forward. I'm going to say this one more time. Let the lady go. For a moment, the morning seemed to hold its breath. Amelia could see the calculation in Kelly's eyes, weighing his options. The stranger did not look like much, just another dusty cowboy, but there was something in his bearing that suggested crossing him would be a mistake. Finally, with a curse, Kelly released Amelia's arm and shoved her away. She stumbled, and the stranger moved quickly to steady her. You are making a big mistake, Kelly snarled. That girl is bought and paid for. The stranger reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He counted out bills and thrust them at Kelly. Here, your money back. Now our business is concluded and you can move along. Kelly stared at the money, then snatched it from the stranger's hand. He shot Amelia a look of pure venom. You will regret this, girl. You have no idea what kind of world waits for women with no protection. She has protection, the stranger said quietly. Mine. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about letting you leave peacefully. Kelly hesitated a moment longer, then spat in the dirt at Bernard's feet. Keep your money, old man. This was not worth the trouble. He turned and stalked toward his wagon, leaving Bernard standing there with his handful of coins. Amelia's uncle looked at her, and for just a second, she thought she saw something like shame flicker across his face. But then he pocketed the money and turned away without a word, heading back toward the saloon at the edge of town. He did not look back. The stranger's hand was still on Amelia's elbow, steadying her. Now that the immediate danger had passed, she felt her legs begin to shake. Thank you, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. I do not know what would have happened if you had not. Do not think about it, he said gently. He released her arm and took a respectful step back. Are you hurt? She shook her head, though her arm throbbed where Kelly had gripped it. I am all right, just shaken. That is understandable. He studied her for a moment, and Amelia became suddenly aware of how she must look. Her dress was worn and patched, her hair hastily braided, her face pale with shock. My name is Samuel Turner. I have a ranch about 10 miles south of here. Do you have anywhere to go? The question hung in the air between them. Amelia looked down the street toward the saloon where her uncle had disappeared, then back at Samuel Turner. No, she admitted, the word tasting like ash. I have nowhere. Samuel nodded as if he had expected that answer. Then I would like to offer you a proposition, Miss Owens, Amelia Owens. Miss Owens, I need help at my ranch. I have been managing on my own since my mother passed last spring, and the place is falling apart around me. I need someone who can cook, help with the house, maybe tend the vegetable garden and the chickens. It is honest work, and I would pay you fair wages. You would have your own room, your own space. I would not. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I would not expect anything from you beyond the work. You would be an employee, nothing more. And if you decided you wanted to leave, find something else, I would help you do that too. Amelia stared at him, searching his face for any hint of deception. After what her uncle had nearly done, after watching the only family she had left sell her like livestock, she should not trust anyone. But something in Samuel Turner's gray eyes seemed genuine. And what choice did she have? She had no money, no prospects, and nowhere to go. She could try to find work in Nebraska City, but as a young woman alone with no references, her options would be limited and potentially dangerous. Why would you help me? She asked. You do not know me. Samuel's expression softened. My mother always taught me to do what is right, even when it is not easy. What your uncle tried to do was wrong. What that man intended was worse. You deserve a chance to make your own way in the world, on your own terms. If I can help with that, then I should. It is as simple as that. There was something in his voice, a fundamental decency that resonated through his words. Amelia had almost forgotten that such men existed. All right, she said, making her decision. I accept your offer, Mr. Turner, and thank you, truly. He touched the brim of his hat. Call me Samuel, and you are welcome, Amelia. Now let us get you out of this town. I have a feeling staying here would not be healthy for either of us. He was right. She could feel eyes on them from various windows and doorways. Some looked curious, others disapproving. She had just publicly defied her uncle and rejected the arrangement he had made. That would not sit well with some of the more traditional townspeople. Samuel seemed to sense her discomfort and gestured toward the livery stable at the end of the street. I rode in last night to pick up supplies, he explained as they walked. My horse is stabled here. We can stop by the general store if you need anything for the journey. Amelia looked down at her carpet bag. Everything she owned in the world was inside it. 2 changes of clothes, her mother's Bible, a silver locket with her parents' pictures inside, and a handkerchief her grandmother had embroidered. I have what I need, she said. Inside the livery, Samuel paid the stable hand and saddled a large bay gelding with kind eyes. The horse nickered softly when Samuel ran a hand down his neck. This is Jasper, Samuel said. He has been with me for 5 years now, steady as they come. He swung up into the saddle with easy grace, then extended his hand down to Amelia. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His palm was calloused from hard work but warm, and he pulled her up behind him as if she weighed nothing at all. She settled awkwardly on the horse's rump, unsure where to put her hands. You will need to hold on, Samuel said over his shoulder. The first part of the ride is a bit rough. Tentatively, Amelia placed her hands on his waist. She could feel the muscles of his back through his shirt, solid and reassuring. When Jasper started moving, she tightened her grip instinctively, and if Samuel noticed, he did not comment. They rode out of Nebraska City as the sun climbed higher in the September sky. The town fell away behind them, giving way to rolling prairie dotted with stands of cottonwood trees. The Missouri River glinted in the distance, a silver ribbon winding through the landscape. It was beautiful country, vast and open, and Amelia felt something in her chest begin to loosen. For the first time in 3 years, she was leaving behind the misery of her uncle's house. Whatever lay ahead could not be worse than what she was leaving behind. They rode in silence for a while, and the only sounds the steady rhythm of Jasper's hooves and the whisper of wind through the grass. Finally, Samuel spoke. If you do not mind me asking, how did you come to be living with your uncle? Amelia took a breath. It hurt to talk about, even after 3 years. My parents died in the cholera outbreak that swept through Omaha in the summer of 1873. I was 16. My uncle was my only living relative, so I came to live with him. I thought he would take care of me, the way family is supposed to, but he just wanted someone to keep house while he drank. And when his debts got too high, he decided I was a commodity he could sell. I am sorry, Samuel said, and the genuine sympathy in his voice made her throat tighten. You deserved better than that. My parents were good people, Amelia continued. My father was a school teacher. My mother took in sewing. We were not rich, but we were happy. They taught me to read and write, to think for myself. They would have been devastated to see what became of me after they died. They would be proud of you, Samuel said firmly. You survived 3 hard years, and when someone tried to steal your freedom, you spoke up. That takes courage. His words settled around her like a warm blanket. They fell back into silence, but it was a comfortable one now. Amelia found herself relaxing slightly, her grip on Samuel's waist easing. The morning sun warmed her shoulders, and the endless sky stretched overhead, so blue it almost hurt to look at. After an hour's ride, the landscape began to change. They followed a creek lined with willows, and soon a collection of buildings came into view. Samuel's ranch was modest but well maintained, a sturdy log house with a stone chimney, a barn that looked relatively new, a chicken coop, and several fenced pastures where horses grazed. Split rail fences marked the boundaries of cultivated land, and Amelia could see rows of corn standing tall in one field. "It is not much," Samuel said as they approached, "but it is home." To Amelia, who had spent the last 3 years in a cramped, dirty room above a saloon, it looked like paradise. "It is wonderful," she said honestly. Samuel reined Jasper to a stop in front of the house and dismounted, then helped Amelia down. Her legs felt shaky after the ride, and she had to grab his arm to steady herself. "Sorry," she murmured, "I am not used to riding." "You did well for your first time," he assured her. "Come inside, I will show you around, and you can settle in." The inside of the house was exactly what she would have expected. Functional, clean enough, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A scarred wooden table sat in the center, and shelves lined the walls, some holding supplies, others empty. 2 doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms. "The room on the left was my mother's," Samuel said, confirming her guess. "I have not touched it since she passed. You can have it if you like. The room on the right is mine. There is a pump out back for water, and the privy is beyond that. The barn has everything for tending the animals. I have chickens, as you saw, and about 20 horses that I raise and sell, a few milk cows, some pigs." Amelia set her carpet bag down and looked around. "It is a good house," she said, "sturdy, well built. My father built it before I was born. He died when I was 10, thrown from a horse. My mother kept the ranch going, taught me everything I know. She was a force of nature, that woman." Samuel's voice held both pride and grief. "I lost her to pneumonia last April. Since then, I've been trying to keep up with everything, but I will admit it has been a struggle." "I am sorry for your loss," Amelia said softly. "It sounds like she was remarkable." "She was." Samuel pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Look, I know this is a lot to take in all at once. Why do you not take some time to rest and get settled? I need to check on the horses and tend to some chores. We can talk more over supper about what the work would look like, what you would be comfortable with." Amelia nodded, grateful for the reprieve. Samuel headed back outside, and she heard him walking toward the barn. Left alone, she picked up her carpet bag and went to the room that had been his mother's. The space was simple but comfortable. A bed with a quilt, a dresser with a wash basin, a chair by the window. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but it was nothing a good cleaning would not fix. Amelia set her bag on the bed and moved to the window. It looked out over the eastern pasture where horses grazed peacefully in the late morning sun. Beyond that, the prairie stretched endlessly, golden grass swaying in the breeze. She sank down onto the edge of the bed and finally let herself feel the weight of everything that had happened. Just hours ago, she'd been standing in the street, listening to her uncle sell her to a man who would have destroyed her life. Now she was sitting in a clean room on a peaceful ranch, offered honest work by a man who had asked nothing of her except that work. It felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment, but it was real. The bed beneath her was solid. The dust on the dresser was real. The view out the window was real. This was her chance at a new beginning, and she would not waste it. Amelia stood and opened her carpetbag, pulling out her few possessions. She hung her 2 dresses in the small wardrobe, placed her mother's Bible on the bedside table, and fastened her mother's locket around her neck. Then she found a rag and spent the next hour cleaning the room, wiping away dust, sweeping the floor, airing out the quilt. Physical work had always helped her think, and by the time she finished, her mind felt clearer. She ventured into the main room and assessed the situation there. Samuel clearly tried to keep things organized, but there was a bachelor's chaos to the space. Dirty dishes sat in a basin by the pump. The floor needed sweeping, the shelves needed organizing. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By the time Samuel came back inside in the late afternoon, the main room had been transformed. The dishes were clean and put away, the floor was swept, the table scrubbed, and something savory bubbled in a pot over the fire. He stopped in the doorway and stared. "I hope you do not mind," Amelia said quickly. "I found some salt pork and beans, some dried herbs. I thought I would make supper." "Mind?" Samuel's face broke into a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and less careworn. "This is the best thing I have come home to in months. Thank you, Amelia." The pleasure in his voice warmed her more than the fire. "It is the least I could do after everything you have done for me." They ate together at the scrubbed table as the sun began to set outside. The food was simple, but Samuel ate with obvious appreciation. Amelia found herself studying him when he was not looking. He had strong features, a straight nose and firm jaw, but it was his eyes that kept drawing her attention. They were kind eyes, she decided, the eyes of someone who had known both loss and love, who understood what it meant to work hard and value what mattered. "Tell me about the work," she said as they ate. "What would you need me to do?" Samuel set down his spoon. "Mainly keeping house, cooking meals. I'm not asking for anything fancy, just good solid food. Tending the chickens, collecting eggs, maybe managing the vegetable garden. My mother had a good garden going, but I have let it get overgrown. If you have any skill with sewing or mending, that would be helpful too. My clothes are falling apart." He gestured ruefully at his shirt, which was indeed frayed at the cuffs. "I can do all of that," Amelia said. "My mother taught me to sew, and I kept house for my uncle. What about wages?" $20 a month plus room and board, Samuel said. "Does that seem fair?" It was more than fair, it was generous. Most hired help would make half that. "That is very fair, thank you." "There is one more thing we should discuss," Samuel said, his tone becoming more serious. "People in town will talk. A young woman living alone with a bachelor, even if it is all proper and above board, will cause gossip. I want you to know that you have my word as a gentleman that I will always treat you with respect. Your room is your own, and your person is your own. I will never presume anything beyond our working arrangement, but I also cannot control what others might say or think." Amelia met his gaze steadily. "I am not concerned with gossip, Samuel. After what happened this morning, I think my reputation in Nebraska City is already compromised. What matters to me is that I am safe and treated fairly. You have given me both. Whatever anyone else thinks is their problem, not mine." Something that looked like respect flickered in Samuel's eyes. "You are braver than you give yourself credit for." "Not brave," Amelia corrected. "Just practical. When you have lost everything, you learn quickly what actually matters." They finished their meal, and Samuel helped her clean up despite her protests. As they worked side by side, washing and drying dishes, Amelia felt a strange sense of contentment settle over her. This was what normal life felt like, she realized. Simple work, simple pleasures, the companionship of someone decent. She had almost forgotten. That night, lying in the clean bed in her own room with the door closed and a lock on the inside, Amelia slept better than she had in 3 years. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Amelia rose at dawn and cooked breakfast while Samuel tended to the horses. They ate together, then went about their separate tasks. She cleaned and organized the house, brought order to the pantry, and started the hard work of reclaiming the vegetable garden. Samuel worked with the horses, mended fences, and handled the endless maintenance a ranch required. They came together for meals, and in those times they talked. Amelia learned that Samuel was 24, that he had never been married, though he had been courted by a girl in town before his mother took sick. The girl had not wanted to take on the burden of an ailing parent, and Samuel had chosen his mother. He did not speak of it with bitterness, just a matter-of-fact acceptance that some people were not built for the hard parts of life. Samuel learned that Amelia was 19, that she had once dreamed of being a teacher like her father, that she loved books and could recite poetry from memory. She shared stories of her parents, bringing them alive with her words, and Samuel listened with genuine interest. They were becoming friends, and that surprised Amelia. She had not expected friendship from this arrangement, just safety and fair work. But Samuel was easy to talk to, and he treated her not as hired help, but as an equal. He asked her opinion on things, respected her thoughts, and seemed to genuinely enjoy her company. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after she arrived, Amelia was working in the garden when Samuel approached. "I need to go into town tomorrow for supplies," he said. "I thought you might want to come along, pick out some things you need. Fabric for dresses, maybe, or anything else." Amelia's hands stilled in the soil. She had not been back to Nebraska City since that morning. "I am not sure that is a good idea." "You cannot hide here forever," Samuel said gently, "and you should not have to. You did nothing wrong, Amelia. Your uncle is the one who should be ashamed to show his face." He was right, but that did not make the prospect less daunting. Still, she needed things. Her dresses were worn, and she wanted to make curtains for her room. "All right," she said, "I will come." The next morning they made the trip into town in Samuel's wagon. Amelia sat beside him on the bench seat, trying not to show her nervousness. As they rolled down the main street, she felt eyes on them, heard the whispers. Samuel seemed oblivious, tipping his hat to people they passed and acting as if everything were perfectly normal. At the general store, he introduced her to the proprietor as his housekeeper, and if Mr. Henderson had any opinions about the arrangement, he kept them to himself. Samuel encouraged Amelia to pick out what she needed, and she selected fabric for 2 new dresses, thread, needles, and material for curtains. Samuel added supplies for the ranch, and they loaded everything into the wagon. As they were leaving, a woman's voice called out, "Samuel Turner, is that you?" They turned. A pretty blonde woman in an expensive dress approached, her face bright with a calculated smile. "I heard you were in town. It has been so long." "Hello, Caroline," Samuel said politely but without warmth. "How have you been?" "Well enough." Caroline's gaze slid to Amelia, and her expression cooled. "And who is this?" "This is Miss Owens, my housekeeper," Samuel said. "Amelia, this is Carolyn Mitchell. We knew each other some time ago." The girl from before, Amelia realized. The one who had left when things got hard. Caroline was looking at her with thinly veiled disdain, and Amelia lifted her chin, refusing to be cowed. "How nice for you, Samuel, to find help," Caroline said sweetly. "Though people are talking, you know. A young woman living alone with you. It is rather scandalous." "Then people need to find better things to occupy their time," Samuel said, his tone cooling. "Miss Owens is a valued employee, and anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me." Caroline's smile tightened. "Of course. I meant no offense. I only worry about your reputation." "My reputation can take care of itself. Now, if you will excuse us, we have a long drive back." Samuel touched Amelia's elbow, guiding her toward the wagon. As they drove away, Amelia glanced back to see Caroline watching them, her expression calculating. "She still has feelings for you," Amelia observed. "No." Samuel snorted. "Caroline has feelings for the idea of a ranch and a husband who will let her live comfortably while doing nothing. When my mother needed me, Caroline made it clear I had to choose. I chose my mother, and I would make the same choice again." "She is very beautiful," Amelia said, surprised by the small twist of something in her chest that felt suspiciously like jealousy. "Beauty without loyalty or kindness is just a pretty shell," Samuel said. "I learned that lesson well." They drove in silence for a while, and then Samuel said quietly, "For what it is worth, I think you are beautiful too. But more than that, you are brave and strong and kind. Those things matter more than what someone looks like." Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was the first time Samuel had said anything remotely personal about her appearance, and she did not know how to respond. "Thank you," she finally managed. The air between them felt different on the drive home, charged with something new and unnamed. Amelia tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just friendship. But when their hands brushed as Samuel helped her down from the wagon, the spark that ran through her was decidedly more than friendly. As October arrived and the weather began to cool, Amelia found herself thinking about Samuel at odd moments, the way he smiled when she made him laugh, the quiet concentration on his face when he worked with the horses, the gentleness in his hands when he handled the animals. She caught herself watching him more often, and sometimes she caught him watching her too. It was dangerous, she knew. She was his employee, dependent on him for safety and security. She could not afford to develop feelings that might complicate things, but the heart, she was learning, did not listen to practical concerns. One evening in mid-October, as they sat by the fire after supper, Samuel suddenly said, "Tell me something about yourself that no one else knows." Amelia looked up from the shirt she was mending. "Why?" "Because I want to know you," he said simply. "The real you, not just the surface." She thought for a moment. "When I was a girl, I used to sneak out of the house at night and climb onto the roof to look at the stars. My mother nearly fainted the first time she caught me, but after that, sometimes she would come with me. We would lie on the roof and she would tell me stories about the constellations. After she died, I used to go up there alone and feel like she was still with me." She paused. "I have not looked at the stars properly since I went to live with my uncle. He kept the door locked at night." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and held out his hand. "Come with me." Curious, she took his hand and let him lead her outside. The night was clear and cold, the sky blazing with stars. Samuel grabbed a blanket from the porch and spread it on a flat area near the barn. He lay down on it and patted the space beside him. "Come on. Time to look at the stars properly." Amelia hesitated only a moment before lying down beside him. The sky above was breathtaking, the Milky Way a river of light across the darkness. "It is beautiful," she breathed. "Tell me the stories," Samuel said. "The ones your mother told you." So Amelia did. She pointed out Cassiopeia and Orion, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. She told him the myths her mother had shared, her voice growing stronger and more animated as the memories flooded back. Samuel listened, his presence warm and solid beside her, occasionally asking questions or making observations. When she finished, they lay in comfortable silence, watching the vast sweep of the cosmos above them. Finally, Samuel spoke. "Thank you for sharing that with me. It means a lot that you would trust me with something so personal." "Thank you for asking," Amelia replied. "And for this, I did not realize how much I missed it." Samuel turned his head to look at her, and she turned to meet his gaze. They were very close, their faces inches apart. In the starlight, his eyes looked silver, and Amelia felt her breath catch. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, and she could feel the pull between them, magnetic and undeniable. Then Samuel sat up abruptly, breaking the spell. "We should go in. It is getting cold." Amelia sat up too, feeling the loss of the moment like a physical ache. But she understood. They could not afford to cross that line, not yet. Maybe not ever. But as they walked back to the house, Samuel's hand found hers in the darkness and held it, just for a moment. And that small gesture said more than words ever could. November brought the first snow, a light dusting that made the prairie look like it had been sprinkled with sugar. Amelia had finished her new dresses and made curtains for both bedrooms and the main room. The house felt more like a home now, warm and welcoming, and Samuel commented on it often. "I never realized how much difference small touches could make," he said one morning, looking at the curtains she had hung. "My mother would have loved what you have done with the place." "Do you think she would have approved of me?" Amelia asked before she could stop herself. "Of this arrangement?" Samuel looked at her seriously. "My mother believed in judging people by their character and their actions. She would have thought you were remarkable, Amelia, just like I do." The words warmed her more than the fire. They were growing closer every day, and Amelia knew she was falling in love with him. She tried to fight it, to maintain proper distance, but it was like trying to hold back the tide. Samuel was everything she had ever hoped to find in a man. Kind, hardworking, honest, respectful. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked. He valued her opinions. And the way he looked at her sometimes made her pulse race. She thought he felt the same way, but neither of them spoke of it. The unspoken feelings hung between them, a sweet tension that colored every interaction. One evening in late November, as the first real snow began to fall, Samuel came in from his chores looking troubled. Amelia was making stew for supper, and she turned from the fire with concern. "What is wrong?" "I saw your uncle in town today," Samuel said, his jaw tight. "He is telling people that I took advantage of you, that I stole you from a legitimate arrangement. He is spreading poison, Amelia, trying to damage both our reputations." Amelia felt anger flare hot and bright. "He has no right. He tried to sell me like livestock." "I know, but that is not how he is telling it. He is painting himself as the wronged party, me as a villain, and you as a naive girl who was led astray." Samuel ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I am worried about what this could mean. If enough people believe him, it could cause real problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind where the sheriff might feel obliged to come out here and ask questions. The kind where your name gets dragged through mud you do not deserve. The kind where people might try to force you back into your uncle's custody." The thought made Amelia's blood run cold. "They cannot do that. I am 19 years old. I have a right to choose where I live and work." "Legally, yes. But we both know the law does not always protect women the way it should. And your uncle still has some standing in the community, as hard as that is to believe." Amelia set down the spoon she had been holding, her mind racing. "What can we do?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was careful. "There is one thing that would end all speculation permanently. If we were married, no one could question your presence here or your choices. Your uncle would have no claim on you, and the gossips would have nothing to say." Amelia's heart lurched. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am saying it is an option," Samuel said slowly. "A practical solution to a practical problem. It would be a marriage of convenience to protect you and your reputation. I would not expect it to be anything more unless you wanted it to be." He paused, then added quietly, "Though I will admit, the idea of you as my wife is not an unpleasant one." Amelia looked at him. This good man who had saved her from a terrible fate, who had given her safety and respect and friendship. She thought about the feelings she had been trying to ignore, the way her heart leaped whenever he smiled at her, the way she dreamed about him at night. A marriage of convenience might be what he was offering, but she knew her own heart too well. She was already in love with him. "If we did this," she said carefully, "would you want it to be a real marriage? Eventually, I mean? Or would you prefer it to remain purely practical?" Samuel took a step toward her, his gray eyes intense. "Amelia, I have been trying to maintain proper distance, to be respectful of the power dynamic between us. You came here vulnerable and dependent on me, and I never wanted to take advantage of that. But if you are asking what I want..." He took another step closer. "I want you to be my wife in every sense of the word. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep beside you. I want to build a life with you, a real partnership. I have been half in love with you since that day in town when you stood up to your uncle, and I have been falling further ever since." Amelia's breath caught. "Why did you not say something?" "Because I did not want you to feel pressured. I wanted you to feel safe here, free to make your own choices. I still do." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and cupped her face gently with his calloused hand. "So I am asking not as your employer, not as the man who brought you here, but as Samuel, a man who has come to love you. Would you consider marrying me? For real, not just for show?" Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Samuel, because I love you too. I have been trying not to, trying to be practical and sensible, but I cannot help it. You are the best man I have ever known." Samuel's face broke into a smile of such joy that it transformed him. "You are sure? You're not just saying yes because you feel you have to?" "I am sure," Amelia said firmly. "I want to marry you, Samuel Turner. I want to be your wife and your partner and build a life with you here." He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her, and she melted into his embrace. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other by the warmth of the fire while snow fell softly outside. Then Samuel pulled back just enough to look down at her, and slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, he lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered. But as Amelia's arms came up to wrap around his neck as she rose on her toes to meet him fully, the kiss deepened. It tasted of hope and promise, of feelings too long denied finally given freedom. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Samuel admitted, his voice rough. "I wish you had," Amelia said with a small laugh. "Think of all the time we wasted being proper." He grinned. "We will make up for it, I promise. But first, we should do this right. I will go into town tomorrow and arrange for the parson to come out this Sunday. Is that too soon?" "It is perfect," Amelia said. She thought of something and bit her lip. "Samuel, about the marriage itself. I know you said you want it to be real, but I need to know what that means to you. I have no experience with such things, and I do not want to disappoint you." Understanding softened his features. "Amelia, we will take things at whatever pace feels right for both of us. There is no rush. We have the rest of our lives to figure everything out together. All I want is you, in whatever way you are comfortable giving yourself. Everything else we will learn together." The tenderness in his voice, the respect in his words, only made her love him more. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding, for everything." They spent the rest of the evening planning, talking about the future, stealing kisses by the firelight. When they finally parted for bed, Amelia floated to her room feeling like she was walking on air. Her life had changed so dramatically in just a few months. She had gone from being sold like property to being cherished by a good man. It felt like a miracle. The next day, Samuel rode into Nebraska City and made the arrangements. The parson agreed to come out the following Sunday to perform the ceremony. Samuel also stopped by the general store and emerged with a small box that he would not let Amelia see. That evening, he presented it to her shyly. Inside was a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. "It was my mother's," he said, "and her mother's before that. I would be honored if you would wear it." Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the ring. "It is beautiful, and it means so much that you would give me something that belonged to your mother." "She would have wanted you to have it," Samuel said. "I know she would have loved you, Amelia. You are everything she hoped I would find in a wife." Sunday came bright and clear, the snow from earlier in the week sparkling in the sunshine. The parson arrived mid-morning with his wife as witness. Amelia wore her best dress, the deep blue one she had made from the fabric Samuel had bought her. She had pinned up her brown hair and wore her mother's locket. Samuel wore his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed for once. They stood together in front of the fireplace, their hands clasped, and spoke their vows. Amelia's voice was clear and steady as she promised to love and honor Samuel, to be his partner in all things. Samuel's voice was deep and sure as he made the same promises to her. When the parson pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her with such tender reverence that Amelia felt her soul take flight. The parson and his wife did not stay long, sensing that the newlyweds wanted privacy. When they left, Samuel and Amelia found themselves alone together as husband and wife for the first time. "Mrs. Turner," Samuel said, trying out her new name. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Amelia admitted. She felt suddenly shy, aware that everything had changed between them, that they now had every right to be together in ways that had been forbidden before. Samuel seemed to sense her nervousness. "Are you hungry? We could have some of that wedding cake Mrs. Henderson sent." They ate cake and talked, the conversation easing the tension. As the afternoon wore on and became evening, they moved closer together on the settee Samuel had built from her suggestions. His arm came around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. When he kissed her this time, there was more heat to it, more promise. His hands moved over her back, her waist, always respectful but growing bolder. Amelia found herself responding with an eagerness that surprised her, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body pressing against his. "Amelia," Samuel said raggedly, pulling back. "We should stop or I will not be able to." "I do not want to stop," she whispered. "I want to be your wife fully, Samuel. I want everything." His eyes darkened with desire and something deeper. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He stood and held out his hand, and she took it. He led her to his bedroom, which was now their bedroom, and closed the door behind them. What happened next was tender and careful, Samuel always attentive to her comfort, making sure she felt safe and cherished. There was some pain at first, but Samuel's patience and gentleness carried her through it, and by the end Amelia understood what all the poets wrote about, why people spoke of love and passion as if they were magical. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Samuel's arms around her, her head on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat beneath her ear, strong and steady. "I love you," Samuel said into her hair. "I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Amelia replied, pressing a kiss to his chest. "You gave me back my life, Samuel. You gave me freedom and choice and love. I could not ask for anything more." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Amelia's last thought before dreams took her was that she was finally truly home. The winter months that followed were among the happiest of Amelia's life. She and Samuel settled into married life with surprising ease, their friendship deepening into a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. They worked together during the day and spent their evenings by the fire, talking and laughing and planning for the future. Their nights were spent learning each other, exploring the physical side of their marriage with growing confidence and pleasure. In town, the gossip eventually died down, especially after it became clear that the marriage was a love match, not some sordid arrangement. Caroline Mitchell made a few more attempts to win back Samuel's attention, but he made it abundantly clear that he was devoted to his wife, and eventually Caroline gave up and set her sights elsewhere. Bernard Owens remained in Nebraska City, drinking away what little money he had left. Amelia saw him once from a distance and felt nothing but pity. He had sold away the only family he had left for a handful of coins, and now he would grow old alone. She did not seek him out or try to reconcile. Some betrayals were too deep to forgive, and she was content to build her new life without him in it. Spring came, and with it, new life on the ranch. Several of the mares had foals, and Amelia delighted in watching the long-legged babies learn to walk. The garden she had reclaimed the previous fall burst into bloom, and she spent happy hours tending it, planning what vegetables to plant. Samuel had purchased more land, expanding the ranch, and hired a young man named Tom to help with the increased workload. It was in early summer that Amelia began to suspect she might be carrying Samuel's child. She missed her monthly courses, and her breasts felt tender. She felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with her work. When she told Samuel, he picked her up and spun her around, whooping with joy. "A baby," he said, his eyes bright with wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Amelia asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Samuel said, setting her down gently. "You have given me everything, Amelia. A home, a partnership, and now a family. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and Samuel worried constantly. He hired a woman from town to help with the housework so Amelia could rest, and he was endlessly patient when the sickness made her irritable. As her belly grew, he treated her like she was made of glass, constantly trying to keep her from doing too much. "Samuel, I am pregnant, not dying," she finally said in exasperation when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "I am perfectly capable of managing normal tasks." I just want to take care of you, he protested. Is that so wrong? She softened and took his hand, placing it on her swollen belly. At that moment, the baby kicked, and Samuel's face lit up with such pure joy that Amelia's irritation melted away. You take wonderful care of me, she assured him, but you need to let me do things too. I will tell you if something is too much, I promise. The baby was born on a cold January morning in 1878, after a long and difficult labor. Samuel held Amelia's hand through all of it, supporting her through each contraction, wiping her face with cool cloths, telling her how strong and brave she was. When the midwife finally placed a squalling, red-faced infant in her arms, Amelia looked down at her son and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. A boy, she breathed. Samuel, we have a son. Samuel, who had tears streaming down his face, leaned over to kiss her forehead, and then the baby's. He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you for this gift. They named him James Samuel Turner, after both Samuel's father and Amelia's father, whose middle name had been James. Little James was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's brown hair. Samuel was utterly besotted, constantly holding his son, talking to him, showing him around the ranch. He's only a few weeks old, Amelia said with amusement one day, watching Samuel give James a tour of the barn. He has no idea what you are saying. He will, Samuel said confidently. I am preparing him for his future, as a master horseman. Amelia laughed. Let him learn to walk first, perhaps. Life settled into a new rhythm. Amelia balanced caring for James with managing the household while Samuel ran the ranch with Tom's help. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Their love for each other deepened with each passing season, strengthened by shared trials and joys. When James was 2, Amelia found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1880 they welcomed a daughter. Rose Margaret Turner came into the world with a full head of dark hair and her mother's determination, announcing her presence with lusty cries that could be heard across the ranch. She has good lungs, Samuel said admiringly, cradling his newborn daughter, just like her mother. I do not wail like that, Amelia protested. No, but you certainly made your opinions known when we first met, Samuel teased. I seem to recall you telling that man Kelly in no uncertain terms that you were not property. That was different, Amelia said, but she was smiling. She watched Samuel with their daughter and thought about how far they had both come. That day in Nebraska City felt like a lifetime ago, like it had happened to different people. In a way, it had. She was not the desperate, frightened girl she had been then, and Samuel was not just the kind stranger who had saved her. They had built something real and lasting together, a love that had been tested and had come through stronger. The years rolled on. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the horses as much as his father did. Rose was spirited and adventurous, constantly getting into mischief and keeping her parents on their toes. In 1883, another son arrived, Daniel Thomas Turner, named for Samuel's late father and Tom, who had become not just an employee but a trusted friend. The ranch prospered. Samuel's horses gained a reputation for quality, and buyers came from as far as Omaha to purchase them. They added more land, built a new barn, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. Amelia kept a beautiful garden and became known in the area for her preserves and her skill with medicinal herbs. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised her by taking her back to the spot near the barn where they had lain under the stars all those years ago. He spread out a blanket just as he had then, and they lay down together looking up at the familiar constellations. Do you remember that night? Samuel asked, lacing his fingers with hers. Of course, Amelia said. It was the night I knew I was falling in love with you, though I tried not to admit it to myself. I knew that night too, Samuel admitted. I wanted to kiss you so badly, but I was terrified of pushing you away. We wasted a lot of time being proper, Amelia said with a smile. Maybe, Samuel agreed. But I think we needed that time. You needed to know you could trust me, that I would never take advantage or hurt you. And I needed to know that what we felt was real, not just gratitude or convenience. Amelia turned her head to look at him. It was always real, Samuel. From the moment you stood up for me in that street, you had my heart. Everything that came after just proved I was right to give it to you. He kissed her then, under the stars, just as he had wanted to all those years ago. The kiss was familiar now, the kiss of long practice and deep knowledge, but it still made her pulse race. Thank you, Samuel said when they parted. For what? For saying yes, for trusting me, for building this life with me, for giving me a family and a home and more happiness than I knew existed, for everything, Amelia. I should be thanking you, Amelia said. You saved me, Samuel. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, Samuel corrected. I was so lost after my mother died, just going through the motions. You brought light back into my life. You made this house a home again. They lay in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. 3 children slept peacefully in the house behind them. The ranch stretched out in all directions, their little kingdom carved from the prairie. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as every day did. But tonight was for remembering, for gratitude, for love. As if reading her thoughts, Samuel spoke again. Do you ever think about that morning? About what would have happened if I had not come along? Sometimes, Amelia admitted. But not often. I prefer to think about what did happen, about how a stranger's kindness changed everything, about how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. I think about it often, Samuel said quietly. I think about how close I came to not being there. I had planned to ride into town that afternoon, but Jasper threw a shoe and I had to go early. If not for that, if I had been even an hour later. He trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. Amelia squeezed his hand. But you were there. That is what matters. You were there and you did the right thing, and everything that came after is because of that choice. Best choice I ever made, or Samuel said firmly. Well, second best. The best was asking you to marry me. And my best choice was saying yes, Amelia replied. They eventually went back inside, checking on their sleeping children before retiring to their own room. That night, they made love with the tenderness of long familiarity, but also with the passion that had never dimmed between them. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Amelia thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. How you could lose everything and then find something even better. How sometimes salvation came in the form of a cowboy with kind eyes and a good heart. The years continued to pass. The children grew. James eventually married a girl from town and built a house on a section of the ranch his father gave him. Rose, true to her adventurous nature, married a surveyor and traveled the frontier with him, though she always came home for holidays. Daniel took over more and more of the ranch operations as Samuel began to slow down. Amelia and Samuel grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces developing the lines and creases of a life well lived, but their love never faded. If anything, it deepened, strengthened by decades of partnership and mutual devotion. On a warm summer evening in 1900, when Amelia was 43 and Samuel was 48, they sat together on the porch they had added to the house years earlier. Grandchildren played in the yard while Daniel and his wife worked in the barn. The sun was setting, painting the prairie gold and orange and red. "Do you know what today is?" Samuel asked, taking Amelia's hand. She thought for a moment, then smiled. 24 years since that September morning in town. 24 years since I found you, Samuel said. Or you found me. I am still not sure which. We found each other, Amelia said. That is how I like to think of it. Samuel brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. Best thing that ever happened to me finding you. Every day since has been a gift. Amelia leaned her head against his shoulder, watching the sun sink lower. She thought about that frightened girl standing in the street, about the cowboy who had stopped to help a stranger. She thought about all the years between, all the joy and sorrow and ordinary moments that had made up their life together. "I love you," she said simply. "Then, now, always." "And I love you," Samuel replied. "My Amelia, my wife, my heart." They sat together as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. Around them, the ranch they had built together hummed with life and love. Their children and grandchildren carried on the legacy they had started, a legacy of hard work and integrity and devotion. It had all begun with one man choosing to do the right thing, one woman choosing to trust again, and two hearts finding their way to each other through circumstance and fate. What had started as an act of kindness had become a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the darkest moments. As the first stars appeared, Samuel pointed out Cassiopeia, just as Amelia had taught him all those years ago. She smiled and nestled closer, grateful beyond words for this life they had made together. The Wild West could be harsh and unforgiving, but it had also given her this: a home, a family, a love that had endured through everything. And that, she thought, as Samuel's arm came around her shoulders, was worth more than all the gold in the Black Hills. Years later, when they were both old and gray, their children would tell their own children the story of how their grandparents met. They would tell about the uncle who tried to sell a girl, the cowboy who stopped him, and the love that blossomed from that moment of courage. They would tell it as a fairy tale, but those who had lived it knew the truth. It was better than any fairy tale because it was real. Samuel and Amelia lived long lives, each day a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and love. They faced hard times and good times, sorrow and joy, but they faced it all together. When Samuel finally passed away at the age of 72, Amelia was holding his hand, just as she had been for nearly half a century. And when she followed him 2 years later, her last words were his name, spoken with all the love of a lifetime. They were buried together on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstone simple but meaningful: Samuel and Amelia Turner, partners in life and love, together always. The ranch continued through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But it all traced back to that September morning in 1876, to a moment of intervention that changed two lives forever. The town of Nebraska City grew and changed. The Wild West became tamer, but the story of Samuel and Amelia endured, because some love stories are more than just romance. They are about redemption and second chances, about choosing courage over convenience, about building something meaningful from broken pieces. They are about recognizing that every person deserves dignity and respect, that family is not always blood, and that sometimes the greatest adventure is simply building a life with someone you love. Samuel and Amelia's story was all of that and more. It was a testament to the best of what people could be, a reminder that even in the hardest times and the wildest places, goodness and love could flourish. Their legacy lived on not just in their descendants, but in the example they set, of standing up for what is right, of choosing love over fear, of building something beautiful together. And on clear nights, when the stars blazed over the Nebraska prairie, you could almost imagine two figures lying on a blanket near an old barn, pointing out constellations and falling in love all over again, because true love never really ends. It becomes part of the land itself, written into the soil and the stars, a story that repeats with every sunrise and every season. The cowboy and the girl he saved became the man and woman who built an empire of love and family. Their story began with an act of heroism, but became something far greater, a partnership that lasted a lifetime, a love that inspired generations, a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to say, "This is not right, and I will not let it stand." Samuel Turner could not have known that September morning when he intervened in a stranger's business that he was choosing his entire future. He only knew that a young woman needed help, and helping her was the right thing to do. Everything that followed, the love And the life and the legacy all flowed from that single decision. And Amelia, standing in that dusty street with her heart breaking and her future uncertain, could not have known that the cowboy with the kind eyes would become her salvation and her soulmate. She only knew that she needed to be brave, to speak up, to take a chance on trust one more time. Together they proved that fairy tales can come true even in the harsh reality of the American frontier. They proved that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, that kindness matters, that standing up for what is right can change the world, at least one small corner of it. Their story became legend in Nebraska City, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But those who knew them, who had seen their love firsthand, knew that no myth could capture the reality of what they had together. The way Samuel looked at Amelia even after decades of marriage, with the same wonder and devotion he had shown as a young man. The way Amelia's face lit up whenever Samuel entered a room, no matter how long they had been together. The partnership they forged, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. That was the real story, the one that mattered. Not the dramatic rescue, though that was important. Not the romance of a cowboy and his bride, though that made for good telling. But the everyday reality of two people choosing each other over and over through all of life's challenges and blessings. The way they worked together to build not just a ranch, but a home. The way they raised their children with love and discipline and wisdom. The way they supported each other through grief and celebrated each other's joys. That was the legacy of Samuel and Amelia Turner. That was what their descendants inherited, along with the land and the horses and the stories. They inherited an example of what marriage could be, what love should be when two people are committed to building something beautiful together. And so their story lives on, passed down through the generations, adapted and embellished, but never losing its essential truth. That sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best things, that kindness matters, that love is real and powerful and worth fighting for. On the ranch that bears their name, the current generation of Turners still tells the story of Samuel and Amelia. They show their children the spot near the old barn where the stars are brightest, where family legend says their great-great-grandparents fell in love. They teach their children the values Samuel and Amelia lived by: integrity, kindness, hard work, devotion to family, and the courage to stand up for what is right. And sometimes on warm summer evenings when the prairie glows gold in the sunset, you can almost feel their presence in the whisper of the wind through the grass, in the solid walls of the house they built, in the rich earth of the garden Amelia planted so long ago. Their love became part of the land itself, a blessing on all who came after, a reminder that the greatest stories are the ones we live, the ones we build together, one day and one choice at a time. The story of how Samuel Turner saved Amelia Owens from a terrible fate and how they built a life together is more than just history. It is inspiration. It is proof that good can triumph, that love can flourish even in harsh conditions, that sometimes all it takes to change a life is one person willing to do the right thing. Their story reminds us that we all have the power to be heroes in someone else's story, that a single act of kindness can ripple through time, creating waves of impact we may never see but that matter more than we can imagine. Samuel saved Amelia that day in September 1876, but in truth they saved each other. He gave her safety and freedom and love. She gave him purpose and partnership and family. Together they created something that outlasted them both, a legacy of love that continues to inspire, and that, in the end, is the greatest love story of all. Not the fairy tale romance of knight and maiden, but the real, gritty, beautiful reality of two people who found each other at the right moment, who chose each other every day after, and who built a life together that mattered. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of love, kindness, and courage, qualities that never go out of style, no matter how much the world changes. The Wild West was a hard place, a place where life was often brutal and short, where justice was uncertain and survival was never guaranteed. But it was also a place where people like Samuel and Amelia could carve out their own destiny, where a cowboy's intervention could save a life, where love could bloom against all odds. Their story is uniquely of that time and place, yet the truths it contains are universal and timeless. As long as the prairie grass grows and the stars shine over Nebraska, the story of Samuel and Amelia will endure. It is woven into the fabric of the land, part of the history and the heritage of all who come from that place and that time. Their love story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, hope remains. Even when all seems lost, redemption is possible. Even in the wildest places, love can find a way. And so we leave them there. Samuel and Amelia Turner, forever young in the stories told about them, forever together under the vast Nebraska sky. Their love began with a moment of courage and grew into a lifetime of devotion. They started as strangers and became partners, lovers, parents, grandparents, and ultimately legends. Their story is complete, their ending happy, their legacy secure. May we all be so fortunate as to find what they found. A love worth fighting for, a partner worth building with, a life worth living. May we all have the courage to do what is right, even when it is hard, even when it costs us something, because we never know what beautiful things might grow from that single choice. And may we all remember that the greatest adventures are not the ones we seek, but the ones we create, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. This is the story of Samuel and Amelia, the cowboy and the girl he saved, and how they built a love that lasted forever. It is a story of the Wild West, of hard times and harder choices, of courage and kindness, and the transforming power of love. It is a story that deserves to be told and retold, remembered and honored, because it reminds us of the very best that we can be. And they lived happily ever after, not because their life was perfect, but because they faced it together with love and devotion and an unshakable commitment to each other. That is the real happy ending, the one that matters, the one that lasts. That is the legacy of Samuel and Amelia Turner, and it will endure as long as there are people who believe in the power of love to change everything.